Dave Whitlock was just this incredible person. I mean, just to be around him was a fascinating experience when I first met him. It was just like that. I mean, he had this incredible mind that he looked at things in the fly fishing world in a different way than most people look at things, whether it was tying flies, whether it was the actual fishing and how he read water, whether it was just his ideas of, oh, I can take something that's already existing in the fly fishing world and improve it in some way. And he just had this joyous personality.
Enthusiastic. He was just, he loved the world around him, and he loved what he did, and he was passionate about it.
Being with Dave, for me, was like being with your dad or granddad, and he always seemed excited to see me. And over the years, we became just dear friends.
You know, you hear things like the Renaissance man or whatever. I mean, that doesn't even come close. This was a man whose talent was unequaled. His caring personality was deep and genuine, but coming from his background and knowledge, you know, he always talked about he was the professor or the person that was the arts and science of fly fishing. How true. I mean, he was an author, he was an artist, he was a top angler, an inventor, all those things. So you rarely, if ever, have I seen all this talent and expertise wrapped up in one person. But that was Dave Whitlock.
Drop his head, I'll get him in a second. Come on, big boy. Oh, it's pretty color, my gosh. That's rainbow trout at its prettiest. So he's 23 inches. That's why I like to trout fish with a fly rod.
Dave Whitlock, artist, author, inventor, fly pattern creator, and fly fisherman extraordinaire. That's how the world and friends recognize Dave Whitlock. But here at Arkansas Fly Fishers, we knew him for other accomplishments. He helped found our club, gave us our logo, and he brought brown trout to the Arkansas Tailwaters.
We wanted to try to plant brown trout in some of the streams in Arkansas. So initially we went to the Arkansas Fish and Game, and they would not give us permission. They didn't think much of the idea. They think it wouldn't work, for one thing.
But with persistence, Dave wore down Game and Fish, who after all didn't think brown trout could survive and reproduce. Well, that might have been the story, except Whitlock invented a better way to plant trout eggs.
And one of the inventive things that Dave had designed was a little vibrant box. And this little box is about as big as a cigarette package. And it has a lot of slats in this plastic box. So you put the eggs in that box, and the eggs are so big that they can't float out through the slats. Once the fish are born, you know, they've got the egg yolk thing on their back, and as that is absorbed, now you've got a skinny little fish that can swim out. That was something that he devised and sold all over the world.
What worked in the mid-'70s still works today. Dave got to watch the stocking of Bonneville cutthroat eggs in the Norfolk River in 2018, and that worked too.
1980s wild brown trout eggs, 1 million of them were implanted in the White and North Fork River by the local fly fishing clubs, which created the best brown trout fishing in North America. I predict that exact same result will happen within a decade. We'll have the best Bonneville cutthroat fishing in the world. Let's go plant some eggs. All right.
One of my most favorite, if not my favorite, bass fly here in Oklahoma is this fly here. And I call it an extra ultralight because it's made out of styrofoam. And it suggests...
And he was inventing, really creating fly patterns. More than 88 patterns and counting to his name.
Now, I didn't tie flies a whole lot, but I would sit and watch Dave tie flies any day because he would tell you all these great things you could do in tying flies. But his influence was just phenomenal.
This is the red fox squirrel nymph, one of his more well-known patterns. It's elegant, versatile, effective, and rather easy to tie. In other words, a near perfect fly.
So that's just part of this artist, of who he is, and this genius level of the ability to create, to invent, and to take all of that and put it into his passion of fly fishing. And it's amazing.
What was it like to fish with Dave?
It was a humbling experience to fish with Dave Whitlock. Not that I was trying to compete, because you can't. And it wasn't like he was trying to make it a competition. He never did. It was the thing I remember most about fishing with Dave is it was like being in a master class.
And bring up Dave and fishing trips to his Arkansas friends, and the stories pour out.
Dwayne Hayda did a piece of art for Dave that was given to Dave when he went into the Arkansas Trout Fishing Hall of Fame, and it was an event up at Mountain Home at the ASU campus up there. And of course, Dwayne's piece of art was beautifully framed, and it was a large painting of Dave fishing on the White River. And you can definitely see in the painting that it's Dave. There's no doubt about it. The guy standing next to him was exceptionally tall, especially compared to Dave, and Dave was short. And this guy next to him has his arm straight up in the air with his cast, which is, that's not the way to cast. And I said to Dwayne, who's been a good friend for a long time, I said, hey, did I come to mind when you painted this? And he said, well, yeah, you kind of did. And so what Dwayne had done, what a lot of artists do before they do a finished version of a painting, is they do what's called an artist study. Kind of like a first or a second draft that a writer would do before they actually send something to get published. So I bought it. And I asked Dwayne, I said, can you do a remark down in the corner, that talks about, just the fact that we were out there on the water and whatnot, because we fished so many times. And then I asked Dave the same thing. And of course, Dwayne's right here, and he did his within a month or two and gave it back to me. And then I sent it to Dave so he could do his. And a year went by, 2 years, 5 years, 6, 7 years. and the painting came to me about 2 years ago with a beautiful card that Dave had done and drawn, and everything Dave sent had some sort of little piece of art, and it said, sorry this took so long. And he sent it to me, and it has a beautiful remark on it, and it's a treasure for me for sure.
One fall when I drove up to North Arkansas to fish with him, he instead of asking, what do you want to do? He said, let's go fishing grasshoppers for smallmouth. So we drove in his truck, parked the truck, and walked about 1.5 miles, 2 miles over the top of this meadow. And at the top of the meadow, there were grasshoppers everywhere, and he grabbed 2 or 3 grasshoppers, put them into his pocket, and we kept on walking, got down to, it was on Crooked Creek, and he said, watch this, and he grabbed those grasshoppers, threw them on the river, and those grasshoppers floated down the river and nothing happened. He looked at me, had this big smile on his face. There were grasshoppers next to the river. He grabbed 2 or 3. He said, now watch this. He threw them on the river and they exploded. As soon as they hit the river, those smallmouth grabbed them. Well, there were 2 different species of grasshopper. And he looked at me again, he smiled, he opened up his fly box. He had tied flies that looked just like the ones that were next to the river. And we caught fish almost every single cast.
Here's the pickup, upstroke pause, downstroke pause, presentation.
He was generous with his time, with his knowledge, with even his gifts, his art. And he was gentle to the people around him, gentle to the fish, our world.
Sherry Barnhart, Director of Arkansas Casting for Recovery, is a more recent member of Dave's circle. Dave and Emily embraced the Casting for Recovery program and opened their Oklahoma Lodge for retreats, embracing not just the ladies, but their guides as well.
You see him kind of walking with that group. And what's very interesting to me about the picture is he's in the middle, He doesn't have anything different on, to show that he's the leader, but you can see that. He's truly the one that they're following. And I think everyone there looked at him as a mentor. I know many of those men personally, and they looked at him as a mentor. But he did it he made it fun, and he made them think that they were as important as he was.
We could go on for hours if we were to note all of Dave's accomplishments. His books, his art, his personal touch on notes and letters, his inventions, his depth of knowledge of fish and what they eat, and all of those famous fly patterns. In the end, it's a legacy that changed a sport, promoted conservation, and left a world of friends privileged to have fished with Dave.
It was hard fishing in the little stream that day, and he wanted more than anything for me to catch a fish out of that creek. And I probably more than I did. And when I finally did, it was joy. We were both so happy. I think we were all jumping up and down.
To fish with him was just a delight. He's the most even-keeled fisher person I think I've ever fished with or have ever known.
Every part of that sport he touched. So everything you do today, everything you have success on, every time you catch a wild stream-bred brown trout up the Little Red River, just look at it and look upward and thank the good Lord and Dave Whitlock for seeing those fish are alive and well, and your grandkids can fish for them, and the legacy lives on. And it's our responsibility to care for these waters and these fish, and follow in his footsteps. And he definitely left us with an amazing legacy.
I think his passion was that he left this place better. He, not just for us, but for the fish too. And I think in everything he did, that was probably what drove him.
He was just that wonderful human being who was out there doing what he needed to do to promote conservation, promote ethical fishing, to promote the things that were necessary to keep things going. His whole vision was, let's keep things and make them better over the next 50 and 100 years for everybody else. That's just who he was.